Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. Welcome, magical ones. The last month or so has been a deeply expansive time for us here at Team Secret Witch. We've expanded our magical team with two amazing new women, and we've been busy birthing our new archetypal apothecary method and philosophy, which is the route that guides sensitive, magical women into self-healing so they can become their magical, full self-expression. I am deeply excited to be bringing this to you for the new year. So if you are a magical woman who hides and shames her expression, then the best way to discover more about this is to keep in touch via our newsletter. You can sign up at www.nicolebarton.co.uk/sign-up. Let's dive into the show today. On the Secret Witch Show today, our guest is Phyliss Curott. Phyllis is one of America's first public witches and a Wiccan Priestess. She's an attorney whose groundbreaking cases secured the rights of witches, and she is the most widely published, internationally best-selling Wiccan author in the world. She's the creator of the Witch's Wisdom Tarot and the online course Awaken the Witch Within. And her new book, which is recently published, is Spells for Living Well, a witch's guide to manifesting change, wellbeing and wonder. The recipient of numerous honours, Phyllis was inducted into the Martin Luther King Jr. Collegium of Clergy and is a Trustee and Program Chair of the Parliament of the World's Religions. In this special episode, we dive into spellcasting as a spiritual, energetic healing practice, exploring the importance of spellcasting as a way of working with the spirits of nature as a powerful witch. We learn how to cast spells and the art of that, how to get it right, in inverted commas, and how to invoke the energetic of the Phosphoric Witch's fire element in spells with deep reverence so that you can become the healer you came here to be. Let's dive in. Welcome, Phyllis. I am so delighted to welcome you back to the show for a second time. It's not often we have second time guests actually on the Secret Witch Show, so you're very special. And I'm really excited to dive into your wisdom about spells, which is a topic close to our hearts here at Team Secret Witch. So congratulations on your new book as well. And in fact, it's funny because we always put a vote into, or a question into the group and to our community to ask for questions for our guest, and yours was the one that's had the most questions, so we've got all the questions for you.
Yeah, we're going to get to work.
Yeah, get to work. People love the spells, so welcome. I think it's going to be a popular episode. So thank you for joining us.
A pleasure. I love talking with you, and I'm looking forward to it. So let's get to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering, you were just sharing before we started something about, we were talking about the Phosphoric Witch, which I was saying is ultimately the kind of the listener of this show. Like, she's a magical, sensitive, fiery woman who has maybe shut down her fire. And you were saying something really beautiful about fire as an element. And how that can be kind of woven into, and really the deeper meaning of fire for the witch queen. So I think that would be a really cool place to start, if you can just recapture everything you just said before we started.
I don't think I could possibly repeat everything, but I'll do the best. So yes, when I was a baby witch, right, I began a lot of learning by working with the elements, the 4 elements, with air, fire, water, and earth. And that's actually how I began Spells for Living Well, the new book. Simple spells that are sort of fundamental practices that are used again and again and again in more elaborate spellcasting or for lots of purposes, right? And the way in which I sort of crafted these sort of fundamental ways of introducing yourself to the element and asking it to work with you, which is already a massive change from your average well-intentioned, but not, I think, terribly mature spell book, of which there are scores out there. And kudos to them, but they're just at the beginning, right, of the journey, and kind of whacked and out of balance. One of the things that people think of when they think of fire, they think of the element as the element of power, of passion, certainly, right? It's associated with courage. Each of the elements, they're not metaphors. They are their own independent, natural, organic forces. And they have spirit, and they have wisdom. They have their own aspects of consciousness, and they have their own magic. And as a young witch, more than 40 years ago, very, very young, 40 years ago, I was taught the classic model, which had come out of the sort of ceremonial magic, which is very Victorian and very male still, and permeates lots of witchcraft, and needs to be undone, right? We have to blow out the candle, light it again. And I was taught, yes, that fire is about power. It's about passion, determination, courage. Those things are true. That's what the element is. That's how it works in the world. And that's how you were supposed to, and I'm using air quotes here, use the element in your magic, in your spell casting. And after quite a number of years of that, all of the elements sort of sat me down and had a conversation with me.
Love that.
And had it again when we were journeying to create the Witch's Wisdom Tarot deck, because that was a profound journey around the circle of the elements. And they have a lot to teach us. And one of the first things that they said was, stop using us, work with us. It's a completely different dynamic. To use is the old patriarchal model. I'm entitled. It's, you will do what I tell you to. You'll give me what I want. I am the one in control. And so many spell books are out there. What is magic? It's the manipulation of unseen forces or nature or whatever you're using, right? To manifest your intention. And it stops there. So it's sort of air and willfulness and gimme, and exploitation use. Well, we've been using fire for now like 180 years, 200 years or so, right? Since we created the combustion engine and started burning everything in sight. And now the planet is burning. It's on fire because we've been using fire instead of engaging in a respectful, humble, even reverential relationship with it. So fire was very clear with me. Fire is like, yes, I am the agency of change. I am power. I am your courage, and your passion. All of those things are true. But if you don't have the right understanding of my nature, then you will destroy everything. And if you use it for the worst in your nature, greed, avarice, power, all, psychotic male fascist leaders all over the world, this boggles, attempting to control billions of people, and billions of people allowing themselves to be controlled, which is the shadow side of that, right? They're in a very unhealthy relationship. The planet will end. But if you will work with me, if you will honor me, if you will be modest, I will teach you my magic, my real magic. And the magic of fire is in right measure. That's the whole deal. That if you work with fire in right measure, it is the element of joy. because, right, the right amount of fire, too much fire, you burn dinner. The right amount of fire, you can take everybody into an altered state of peace and nourishment and joy and security and I mean, there's nothing better, right, than sitting down to a delicious meal. And cooking is magic. It's alchemy. It's the transformation of, and the bringing together of all these elements into something new. It's the right amount of heat done the right way, which, we haven't been doing, to warm your house. The right amount of energy, the right kind of energy to run a car or a machine or a technology. Fire in the wrong measure will destroy everything, will destroy the planet, will destroy us. So it's sort of the first element that we need to rediscover how to make magic with. And once I think the very first step that I talked about in Spells for Living Well is to come to all of the elements, each of the elements, because most spells work with air, with water, with fire. There's a potion, there's an incantation, there's candle magic, right? There are potions that are made with elements of the earth, with herbs and plants and crystals. You have to approach them with respect, with an understanding that they have an existence outside of your own and their own wisdom and their own magic. And they're not yours to exploit, but they are sacred partners who will help you and teach you and lend their powers to yours to expand what you're capable of doing.
Yeah, I love that. There's so much in what you just said, and I guess the reason we started with talking about fire, because people went there when we first started talking about it, because I was explaining about how the listener is a phosphoric witch, and phosphorus is what's on the end of a match, and so she can often either burn herself down or use her fire for good, for healing both for herself and for others. So I absolutely love everything that you've just shared. It's like so aligned with the way I see things, and I loved as well the like deep reverence that you had for the elements, because that's very much been my own experience of working with the remedies that we work in this path, which aren't just elements. They can be literally anything, but yeah, fire, I really feel it feels to me there's like these things that we work with, they have their own spirit, is what I'm hearing you say, and that's very much how I see it.
Yes. Everything is alive and has some measure or aspect of consciousness. We have, deluded ourselves for thousands of years that we're the only conscious being, right? I mean, it wasn't long ago, and some people still think this, that animals have no feelings or consciousness or awareness. I mean, it's this terrible hubris, this crazy pride, and it's a part of what separated us from the natural world and from the sacred. My long experience in doing this work, through which I have truly, I think, matured and evolved and come to this posture of tremendous gratitude and humility. It's really interesting because to craft a spell is deeply empowering, right? But not in the typical patriarchal, just sort of mechanical way that a lot of people have been approaching it. Because spells don't always work. They don't always work in the way that you intend. They don't always manifest. They certainly don't always manifest in the time frame that you have in mind. But there's one way that they do work, which goes right to what you're talking about in terms of healing. And the phosphorus, the witch of fire, is one of my favorite cards in the Witch's Wisdom Tarot deck. The witches are healers. I want to sort of, it's a complicated thought, and I want to say it simply. Witches are healers, and this is an old shamanic wisdom, and the witch is a 5,000-year-old word. It's the shamanism of our ancestors that we're reviving and rediscovering. And witches have always been healers. They've always known that spirit and world are one, that everything is divine, that all things are conductors of divinity. They are everything from the stone, which we think of as being unconscious, but which is the bones of the earth, right? And has energy and wisdom. The plants, the insects, the animals, the tree, everything is an embodiment of the divine, a conductor of it, right? A container of it, an expression of it. We've always thought of spirit as being elsewhere or just energy, but it's not. It's energy and embodiment. And witches have always known that the two things are one, that it's a continuum from energy into form and form back into energy. And magic is the flow of that life force into form and back into energy. And we're acutely aware of it this time of year, right? When the veil between worlds thins and we're literally able to experience the presence of our ancestors. Their spirits are able to be with us. And so the gift of the witch is to know that the wound, that the fires that burned us 5,000 years ago and left us traumatized, damaged, self-doubting, frightened, aware in some cellular level that it could happen again, right? Because it is all over the world. Papua New Guinea, India, Bangladesh, Africa, in the United States, in Saudi Arabia, 2 people were executed in 2011 for the accusation. In Africa, there are these terrible camps where people and children, women and children are being put to be, as witches. I mean, it's always right beneath the surface. And so that flare, which can ignite a fire of devastation, a fire for power, a fire for greed, a fire that expresses our darkness, is, that memory is cellular. It's in our bones, it's in our psyches, it's in our culture. And we absorb it without even realizing it, right? It takes years to even learn about the witches. But there's a blessing in every wound. This is a terrible metaphor in this context, but I bought my first sailboat as a grown-up person. I grew up on sailboats, and I bought my first sailboat years ago. It was this beautiful old boat. I loved it. It was just what I wanted. But when I crawled inside of it to look inside, I saw there was a patch, and I was like, uh-oh. So I got an expert to look at it, to tell me whether the boat was sound, or yar, as they like to say. And he crawled down, into the bow of the boat, and he comes out, an older guy, and he says, yes, the boat had an accident, it was damaged, it was repaired, it was healed, right? It was repaired. That's the strongest place. That's the strongest spot on your boat. That stayed with me. Witches are healers. In order to heal, you have to be wounded. You can't heal anyone else if you haven't learned how to heal yourself. And so fine, we were burned, right? And that fear was internalized, was codified by the laws and the customs of our culture, and continued for more than 500 years. And we doubt ourselves, and we flare up in rebellion against it, but then don't know how to direct that energy effectively and can burn ourselves out. But the fact is that we can transform the curse into a blessing by learning how to heal, by learning how to work with fire, by asking for its blessing, by learning how to use our power. And that's part of what I was trying to do in Spells for Living Well, to take people from these sort of incredibly simple but incredibly powerful little spells, little practices, through the usual suspects, love and abundance, through the modern crises of depression and isolation and despair and powerlessness, back into a relationship with nature as a source of wisdom and context that's sacred and support, which is profound. And finally, to a place of real deep healing and peace and wonder. Because the fact is, you're here for a reason. And the spark of life that's burning inside of you, right, is precious, has the capacity, one tiny little candle has the capacity to fill darkness with light and to transform that darkness into light. And it's through learning what gives you joy, because ultimately fire is the element of joy. And if you go towards the things that give you joy, they heal you. If you go into nature, it will heal you. If you create spells, they will heal you, because even if they don't manifest what you want on the outside, they always make magic on the inside. Always, always, always. They show you your capacity to create beauty, to create a state of wonder, because that's what you experience when you're crafting a spell and you're doing it, to feel your power, right? To bring about the change that you need. They show you what you really need, what you really want, what you are really capable of, where your wound is, and they show you how to heal it. They're empowering. The one thing about a spell, whether it works on the outside or not, it will always empower you on the inside. And I am, when you approach a spell, not as a mechanical manipulation, as the old model of fire to have power over things, but rather as a spiritual practice, right? To open yourself to the divinity of creation. They are by nature healing. And lovely, lovely, lovely. Most spells just talk about intention. Then they have you do some stuff, right? Whatever that is. This classic stuff. Carve a candle, light it. Grind a potion, drink it. What? But an important part that I hope I communicated in Spells for Living Well is that that magic is not just your intention. That's Victorian England. That's the head up. There's no body. It's just your mind. And a lot of New Age is that. Just think it. Law of abundance. Think it, and if it doesn't happen, it's because you doubted. I don't know about you. I doubt all the time. I doubt that I'm wearing the right clothes. I doubt that my hair looks good. I doubt that we're going to survive the next election cycle. I mean, it doesn't stop. But there's a lot to doubt.
Secret Witch knows doubt. Yeah, she absolutely does.
Yeah. But if you work your way around the circle and you work with the wisdom and blessings and the magic of all of the elements, you realize it's not just what's in your head. It's your energy, right? It's what you bring to your life. It's your heart, your emotions, your feelings. It's your actions, how you engage, how you take actions in the world to give yourself the things that you long for and deserve. And if you engage completely and fully, then you're living a magical life. I think that everything we're living in a toxic, broken, dangerous, incredibly stressful time and culture. We are living now with the consequences of 5,000 years of wrong thinking, wrong living, right? And the challenge, the lights are really powerful right now. The challenge for us is to heal ourselves and to participate in the healing of the world, but we're not on our own. I guess that would be the last thing. And the thing that I was trying to share with people in Spells for Living Well is that you don't have, everything you need to heal is inside of you. That's your phosphorus. That's that little heckety phosphorus with that torch. That little light is inside of you. No matter how dark you may feel, no matter how dark the world around you may seem, you're a light bearer, and it will light your way. That just the slightest spark is all you need to begin to heal. Everything you need is inside of you. but everything
Yeah.
you need is all around you also in the natural world.
Yeah, I love what you're pointing to here, because this is something that's very much like I just really resonate with everything that you share, because yeah, for me, like that's what my path is also all about. It's like the fact that we're not here to learn how to use spells in a way that's like got to be done X, Y, Z, like to, as you say, set that intention and then wait for it to heal you. Like we're working energetically with spells in order to allow, like with the spirits as well, of the things that we're working with, in order to kind of, yeah, allow ourselves to heal. Like it's that conscious, intentional, energetic healing, it feels. I can't think of another way to say that than the way that you've just explained it. Um, but yeah, and it feels quite a subtle kind of nuance, but it very much is there. I don't know if you can word that in a different way, but
I I think I think it's people, I think it's sort of this both and awakening, that things won't change unless you're committed to changing them, right? You have to be the witch of your life. You have to
yeah,
be the agent
beautiful.
of your transformation. You have to commit to the magic of the spell casting that you are engaged in. It can't just
Mm,
be a mechanical thing. I'm going to do this and the spell will do it for me.
yeah.
You're the spell. You're the creator of the spell. You're the agent of the spell. You're the ground of, in which the spell takes place. It's not, out there somewhere else, which is what I was taught, which is the old patriarchal model that spirit somewhere else and God somewhere else and the magic somewhere else. It's like, nope, you're the spell. And so when you sort of wake up to that, that's part of the empowerment. But the other
Mm,
part of it is that spells offer us is a spell could be that you simply sit, you meditate, you visualize, or you articulate, you say, well, I would like my next publisher to be Hay House. And then this is, I didn't realize I was even casting that spell. And the next morning I opened my email and there was the email from Hay House saying, we'd like you to write this next book. Okay, that is a spell. And, but that's after a lifetime of living a magical life that, articulation and passion and intention, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And boom. But, no one was going to write that book for me. Then is the act and accord. Then is the work. Then is the, that your life is the field of your magic, that the spell won't manifest until you're fully committed and engaged with it.
mm.
But the universe is present. Spirit is present. It's present. Nature is present. It's blessing us as we breathe, connecting us to the plants of the planet, teaching us about balance and interdependence and reciprocity. Water. I'm sorry about the dinging. I have to figure out how to fix that on my computer. I apologize. A walk in nature is full of magic and full of healing. And it's one of the things when people need healing, I encourage them as much as possible, even in bad weather, get outside, get outside, get outside.
Mm. One
That's
of the places, one of the places where I'm seeing that witches often need healing is in even the allowing of themselves to step into healing, which I think is an interesting one to maybe explore, because there can be, like you said, that fear. Like the witch is really associated. I'm personally experiencing at the moment, like the witch has so much fear around her, because she's like here for the darkness, and I'm seeing like there's a real, like my whole life I've been here for those dark conversations and like all of that. And I'm seeing that there's a lot of fear around that for people as well. And I think there's also possibly even that fear associated with spells. So I'm wondering if there's anything that you can talk to around that, because I think there's a definite part of the secret witch who kind of fears being approved of if she's kind of spell casting and working magic. And again, even magic itself can be feared. So yeah, I just wondered whether you could talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, fear, that was the point of the witch trauma.
Mm,
Torture you, take everything, burn you at the stake, modern equivalent, ostracize you, humiliate you, fire you, leave you, abandon you, kick you out of the family, isolate you, punish you, humiliate you. And I'm not going to diminish those things. They're real. I've experienced them. I've experienced, members of my extended family ostracizing me and demeaning me. People don't need to hear it. I've experienced the consequences of 500 years of a negative stereotype. You can't be public and not have that. And I'm very acutely aware right now with the rising fascism in the United States, which is associated with Christian nationalism, which is using words like the devil and has these mad QAnon conspiracy ideas of, Democratic politicians worshiping Satan. I mean, this, it's just this old trope that never seems to go away. That the past is just rehearsal for the present. And so it is not irrational to be frightened of deeply irrational, violent behavior that, comes from highly dysfunctional, really damaged people, They project their garbage. That's what the witch is. She's the projection of the fear of women, of their spirituality, their own feelings of inadequacy, sexual and others, that is then projected onto women. And it's gone on for hundreds and hundreds of years. So of course you're afraid. It's a reasonable reaction to completely unreasonable behavior by a culture, by individuals. And it's connected to your instinct for survival. So yeah, yes. So number one, nobody needs to know. It's nobody's business. You want to be a witch, be a witch. You want to cast a spell, cast a spell. Who exactly is it that you have to discuss this with? Nobody. It's nobody's business but yours. If you want to be a witch and you want to stay in the closet, clean the closet, get the cobwebs out and, try to get them out of your head. Try to get them out of your head, that what you're doing is evil. Go educate you. To me, information is power. Go read some books. Read Ronald Hutton. Read Elizabeth Barstow's book. Read the book about witches, midwives, and what I can't remember her name now. There's plenty. Read Max Dashu. You want your blood to boil, and the carcass of fear to be evaporated. Look at Max Dashu's work online. Brilliant historian about what happened to women in their oppression. You will get so angry, you won't be afraid anymore because you will be too ready to climb the barricades with, a flag.
I love that. And also it feels to me that, again, this kind of spell work we can use for the healing of that as well.
Yes, you absolutely can. And the whole point of Spells for Living Will is that it starts with the simplest thing. The first thing you did when you got here, which is breath. And it calms, it's crafted, it's a practice, but it's crafted as a spell to calm you, to open you, and to connect you to the magic of creation. And it ends with spells for wonder and welcoming home. And it takes you, you can dip into it at any point, but spells are they're not mechanical manipulations. There is no demonic stuff. That's entirely a projection of patriarchal religions. It's got nothing to do with this. This is the indigenous wisdom traditions of your ancestors. Your ancestors deserve, to be remembered and to be honored properly. And in the practice comes the healing, comes the rediscovery of your power. A spell is a spiritual practice. It's not a mechanical manipulation.
I'd love for you to share more on that, actually, because that was going to be one of the questions that just feels that could be really illuminating by what you mean by that.
What do I mean by that? When you cast a spell, the old model was that it was this manipulation of unseen forces to get what you want. Totally mechanical. Views the universe as if it's a machine, right? Views a spell as if it's a formula for operating the machine, and views the entire point of it as, giving you what you want. It's patriarchal magic. It's got nothing to do with the real magic. In fact, magic is utterly natural. It is the flow of the divine into creation, embodied by the natural world and embodied by us. And so a spell is the way in which we begin to shift our, it's the way we get the blindfold off that's been tied on by history and by habit, right? By fear. And it comes off, and you start to see that the divine is present in the world and it's in you. And when you create a spell, you're creating, it's a spiritual artwork. You're working with the energies of spirit, which are by definition sacred, right? And you feel it, you experience it, and you feel it flowing into you as you're working, even if it's utterly simple, because spells can be incredibly simple. I mean, breath can be, setting of intention, just words are magic, the speaking. Louise Hay was a wonderful witch. She wouldn't have used that word at that time. She'd probably use it now, right? She understood the power of words, and affirmations are in fact incantations. They're the repetition of your intention, of what you need, of the healing that you need. When you cast a spell, you are engaging with spirit. You're inviting it to be present with you. You're opening yourself to it. You're going to the well of the divine that is within you as well. You are asking for help. You're asking for healing. You're asking for guidance. You're asking for blessings, all of which are always being offered to you. We're just kind of oblivious to it. Breath of life, waters of life, food, nourishment, everything we need, health, the capacity to heal. It's miraculous and magical that our bodies have the capacity to heal themselves, right? They're helped by good antibiotics and vaccines and, and bandages when you need them, and, a good doctor who can set a bone, and witches were those herbalists and bone setters and healers. But also our psyches need the healing. And a spell is by definition a healing and a sacred healing practice, because it heals the psyche. How? Because you open yourself and you ask for the help of the sacred, and it comes to you. It comes to you. If you choose to work with fire, it comes to you as the element of fire. If you work with air, it comes to you as the element of air. At the next level, it might come to you as a spirit or a deity that's associated with that element, for example. It could be an ancestor that comes to you, or an animal, or a plant, right? If you're doing healing work, the plants are healers. So you open yourself, you invite. You have to be patient. If it doesn't feel as if it works the first time, you do it again. But they work, and they work as spiritual practices because spirit is everywhere. And a spell is the declaration of your intention to work with spirit, to make your life better. And as you mature, you realize to make the world a better place as well.
Yeah.
To be an agent of healing of yourself, to be an agent of healing in the world. And they work. They really, I have had a deeply magical life with spells that were utterly simple, spells that were unintentional, spells that I didn't realize at the time were spells. And I can tell you that it's a gorgeous way to live. it's a crafting of spirit into form, which is what nature does.
Love that.
Nature
I love
teaches
that.
you how to do it.
That makes so much sense to me. So synchronistic with the way I see things and feel things, of course. But there's often a sense as well. I think one of the fears that often comes up with my women in terms of like casting spells and doing rituals and creating things like that, is the fear of getting it wrong. Like, so I'd love to speak to that, because if people are thinking, yeah, I really, really resonate with what was being shared here, like, but what if I get it wrong? I just know that's one of the fears. Something that would be good to speak to.
Yeah. Well, that's one reason I wrote the book, right?
Yeah.
To guide people through the process and to show them how simple it can be, and to take them past some of the sort of typical mistakes and pitfalls that are out there. But you're dealing with energies that are sacred, your own and that of nature and that of spirit. And as soon as you open yourself to it, the sense of presence that comes is so benevolent and generous and compassionate. And you feel that, and it's so nurturing. And you're going to make mistakes, you're going to like grind up. I'm not a formulaic person in my approach to spellcasting, right? So, it's like, well, I can't find red pepper, so I guess I can't do the spell. It's like, you don't need the red pepper. You don't need the red pepper. You use black pepper. It's fine, right? It's okay. You grind up the end of a match. There's phosphor. That's your little spark. Everything has power, and when you work creatively, right, like a painter, a painter cannot paint without paint. So when you're crafting a spell, it helps to have air and fire and water and herbs and crystals and all these lovely things to work with you. But ultimately, the paint that you're working with is spirit and nature, and that's always present. And
for me, there's a sense
if you're not laughing, you're not doing it right. And the whole point of making a mistake is to get you to laugh at yourself. And the universe has always got, it's always throwing a banana peel down. So I know there's a fear that's that, Harry Potter Fantasia with Mickey Mouse with the hat, and he opens the book and he does the spell, and all of a sudden there's too many brooms with too much water and everything's like, relax, it's all good.
There's a sense for me of there's a sense for me of like the witch is about wisdom as well, and for me, spell casting is very much like, as long as you're kind of working with the whatever you're working with in a really honoring way, that and also that it feels like the energetic that you want to be working with. So for example, what I could just give an example of is like, if you were, say, wanting to embody the feminine, like you might work with rose petals or rose quartz or whatever it is that feels like that energetic. For me, there's like a real wisdom to the way that we can cast spells. I don't know what you feel about that.
There's a traditional, it isn't just anything goes, because that's disconnected from how spirit is embodied by creation, right? And I see tons of stuff out on Instagram and stuff that makes, my head want to explode, like, do your banishing at the full moon. It's like, no, there's real energy, real currents of energy, real cycles of energy. At the full moon, things are coming into the full measure of their being. So full moons aren't for banishing, waning moons are for banishing, dark moons are for banishing. There's real energy out there. Roses have real specific, the fragrance, the color, the way in which they open, the way they look, they are feminine, right? Would you use a carrot for feminine energy? Well, you're cooking with it, but right? There is a wisdom. Some of it was ruptured and lost. Some of it continued. We organize at witches who've been doing this for a long time, organize it in the table of correspondences, which is incredibly useful. I haven't found it in most spell books. It's in Spells for Living Well. It's a table of how to work with energies and their embodiments, what they mean in terms of our embodiment of spirit, and what they mean in terms of spellcasting, and the relationships, correspondences, the relationships between us and particular plants, us and animals, us and weather, us and elements, you know. And interestingly, when you work with the elements, when you work with nature, their energies really flow into you. You know, they flow into the parts of you that have been empty, that need healing, that need expression, that need to be brought into the fullness of their being. And so it's an art. I always think of witchcraft as the jazz of religion or spirituality. What does that mean? It means that you have to learn to play your instrument, right? You have to learn to read music. You have to learn how to play with the rest of the orchestra, which for us is both spirit and nature. And then you can improvise. And you can improvise. You know, always I think people need to leave room for spirit, for sacred. The model of, you know, set your intention, see it clearly, see it exactly, you know, see yourself, see the suit, see the door of the office that you're, you know, see your office, see your job, see your paycheck. Leave a little room for something far more marvelous than anything you could intend, because usually the divine, you know, the divine sees the big picture, sees beyond, you know, the immediate future that we tend to get hooked up on and caught up on, sees us in a fuller measure than we see ourselves, and usually intends things that are far more phenomenal than we could ever imagine for ourselves. So it's very important, whatever you're doing, to leave space. And I think if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. I mean, I see everybody putting out, you know, aside from the banish at the full moon, like everybody's doing jar spells right now, big thing. I'm like, I don't know. You know, when I put something in a jar, I'm putting in it to seal it, to preserve it, to keep it contained. When I cast a spell, I want it going out. You know, I ask the universe to accept my, you know, my energy working, because you're an energy worker when you're casting a spell. I'm asking the energy of creation, you know, to lend itself to me and to accept my energy and to work with it. And I want it going out into the world where it has influence. Am I right and they're wrong? Well, the only spells that we ever put in jars were things I wouldn't do anyway. So, but they get circulated. They get circulated. That was one reason that I did the spell book, because there are more let's say this, there are more effective ways of working, and mistakes are not things that you need to be concerned about. When the spell works out in a wonky way, the question to ask yourself is, why did it work out in a wonky? What did I learn from that?
Yeah, that was just what I was feeling, is like there's always something to learn from, and maybe it happened exactly that way for us to be able to see something that we were meant to see, is my sense of that. Like, it, for me, it doesn't feel like that's a mistake. It feels like it's kind of almost divine divine timing and divine perfection, because there's always something to be seen, right?
Totally. I cast a love spell. It was the last love spell I ever cast. Cast a love spell, oh my goodness, 20 years ago. And I asked for the love that was right for me, that would make me happy now. Then, but now. And the person who was right for me now. And I asked for a sign, so I would recognize, so I would know who it was, and I wouldn't just like get attracted to my usual whatever, right? And I had a dream. A couple nights later, I had a dream of this guy. I couldn't really see him clearly, but certainly he was handsome. Dark hair, pulled up on a black motorcycle. Whoa, bad boy, right? With lots of, the motorcycle had a lot of chrome. It was shining. And you know, the way dreams are, right? So I'm seeing like what's going on in the ad. And then the next thing I know, there's a knock on my door, and I open my door, and he's leaning against my door frame and has a bouquet of flowers. I was like, ooh, good. I woke up, good dream. I wake up, the phone is ringing, and it's a friend of mine who knows I'm single and, you know, I'm interested in dating. And he says, listen, I have a friend of mine. I think you should meet him. And I said, no, I'm done for a while. I can't do it. He said, no, let me just tell you a little bit about him. He's a photographer. He's got a loft in Soho, you know, all these things that sounded very good. And I'm still going, no. And he says, and he rides a motorcycle. I was like, giant ears, like a, you know, what color is the motorcycle? He said, he hesitated, he said, it's black and it has a lot of chrome. I said, I'll meet him. Our second date, he knocks on my door. I open my door, because the first date I met him, you know, someplace else. Second date, second date is going to be on his motorcycle, and he arrives at my door, knock, knock. I open it, and he's leaning against the door frame with a bouquet of flowers. I married him. Now, 10 years later, I ended up divorced from him, and it was heartbreaking, but he was the right person for me at that time in so many invaluable ways. He was not the person for my life, but he was the person for me then, and the universe fine. So right? So spells will work in the ways that you need them to, because ultimately what it was all about was not about him or even our life. It was about myself. It was about what I needed to learn, what I needed to heal, what I needed to understand, who I needed to become, including the pain and the suffering and the heartbreak and the loss that I had to go through. Because you can't heal without the wound. And that the places of healing are the places that are strongest in our souls, in our psyches, in our hearts, in our lives. And witches are healers. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of anything or anybody. Certainly don't be afraid of your power. Don't be afraid of your fire. Don't be afraid of others. Nobody needs to know you're a witch which may never come, the day where you can stand fully in your power without fear and say to the world, this is who I am. I am a wise one. I am here, and I am a light in the world, because that is why you're here. You're here to be a light in the world.
I love that. I love that so much. There's so much there. And I'm wondering if we go to the group questions now.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be, that was an amazing story, by the way, about your love spell. Yeah, that's wow. Yeah. I love magic like that when it's just so obvious.
Right? Can't argue.
Yeah. Gorgeous. Well, one of the questions actually was, what is the difference between a spell and a ritual?
Not much, right? They don't have to be. I think in spells, we tend to be a little more focused upon what we need, what we want, what our intention is to change what we need to create the well-being, right, that we deserve. That in fact, the entire world is organized to help give to us, because that is the organizing principle at the heart of creation. But a ritual, I think, it's a very fluid, it's not a hard and fast wall. This is, spell is X and ritual is Y. They flow into each other, I think. And I would place the spell a little more at the end of self-care, although Spells for Living Well has a lot of spells of gratitude and of giving back and of healing the planet, of healing Mother Earth, of helping to heal others. So, spells aren't just about the self, but rituals, right, are very much about making offerings to something greater than oneself, attending to the wisdom and the magic and the expression of things that are greater than oneself. And I think I would put them at that end of the spectrum, that with spells, there's more focus upon the self, and in ritual, there is more focus upon the great totality, the wholeness, the oneness.
I love that. Yeah. No, I can really feel
they
that.
are, spells to me are rituals, and rituals are spells. Because they are both, they're both spiritual practices.
Yeah.
If you look at spiritual practice and then spells and rituals, but there's a flow back and forth between them. I took Sabbath rituals because I realized that they are spells to bring us into harmony with these great energetic cycles, these seasonal cycles that are full of power and full of wisdom that we've completely lost track of. And when you bring yourself into alignment with them, your life gets so much easier. It just gets so much easier. And you become more productive in ways that you need to be. You are able to rest, more deeply in the ways that you should. You're able to attend to the things that the culture doesn't encourage that are absolutely essential to your well-being, like dreams. We're entering the dream time, right? And so I sort of took the traditional Sabbath rites and just retooled them, to focus them a little bit more as spells. But they overlap like a Venn diagram.
We do love a Venn diagram.
I love Venn diagram.
Yeah. Awesome, thank you. Well, the next question we've kind of touched on this a little bit. I'm going to ask in case there's anything you want to add to it. So this person said, every word you speak is a spell. How can we make sure we say the right words in our spells? Can we do it wrong and cause something that we don't want?
This is the best way for me to dispel your worry about making a mistake or saying things wrong or doing things wrong is to encourage you to plunge in and work, because you will make mistakes, you will say the wrong thing, and you will see that the world didn't end.
This is so true. I'm thinking of some of my own.
The world is ending now.
I did use that word. I didn't mean to. Right. Look what I created. Chaos.
But Timpa, I hate to break it to you. The world is ending. So you need to get to work. You need to not worry about the wrong word. I guarantee you will make a mistake. Oh, I guarantee you will reverse the language or whatever. What is important is what's in your heart.
Yeah, I love that. One of the next questions actually was, are there words that are more powerful than others, or is it the intention behind the words? And that's what it feels like you're saying there. Actually, that was another question, but it feels like you're saying it's the deeper energetic of the spell rather than the words themselves.
These are such wonderful questions. So spells can be very elaborate, and you can use other people's language. Or you can craft your own. And one of the things that we know, just to go back a little bit to language and spells, and it's interesting that science has affirmed this, and Buddhists know this, right? Rhyme, rhythm, and repetition. Rhyme, rhythm, and repetition. So what's your intention? I have this in several of the spells at the very beginning to sort of teach you and get you into this. Incantation. What is it? To chant over. Ancient shamanic practice used by most mystical and spiritual and certainly indigenous traditions all over the globe, and witches as well. So What is your goal? What's the purpose of this spell? Why are you casting a spell? Right? And so you focus on that. What is that? And then you write the incantation, you write the spell. So it's a simple little rhyming spell. The book ends with the spell for living well. And it rhymes, this repetition and this rhythm, and it repeats. The process of rhyming, repetition, and rhythm is that it alters consciousness.
Mm.
And an altered state of consciousness is one that is able to perceive more easily the sacred and have influence, right? That our consciousness is able to move out into creation, into the realms of infinite potential, and have an impact. And so there you go. So if you write your incantation, if you write your spell, there's no wrong word. There are the words that you choose, right? And in rhyming, you remember them. So you're able to repeat them very easily. And you release into that emotion, the idea of it's not just your intention, it's your energy. Are you chanting? Are you dancing? Are you rattling? Are you drumming? Are you walking through the woods? Are you making an offering? Are you digging? What energy are you bringing to this? And what's the quality of the energy? Your emotions are everything in casting a spell. People often say, well, when is the one time I shouldn't cast a spell? And I always say it's when you're angry. Don't cast spells when you're angry. Do not cast an angry spell, because that's where the energy can get discordant and and kind of negative and wonky. Just wait until you're calm and put your focus on the positive, right? What is the positive thing you want to accomplish rather than the negative thing that is aggravating and provoking you? What is the positive thing? Your emotions are an energy, right? That your emotions are what color your energy. And the stronger your emotions, and the more those emotions are rooted in love and generosity and joy, the more swiftly, the more powerfully, the more effectively your spell is going to manifest. One of the keys, though, that nobody talks about, that I talked about again and again, every spell, you come round to north, you have to act in accord. If you don't act in accord with your spell, if you don't take action in the quote mundane world, in the world of embodiment, your spell is not going to manifest. You have to act. You can't ask for abundance and then sit on the couch and eat Halloween candy.
I love that. Yeah, that's so true.
It's just so not going. It won't work. But a spell has a much better chance of working externally if you work at it, if you engage in the realm of manifestation, if you take the necessary actions.
Yeah, that's really, really powerful. Thank you for sharing that, actually. Yeah, I so see that the witch particularly is here for that as well, that manifestation on earth into form. Yeah, also another part of that question was, I wonder, I'm Dutch, so would I or could I use Dutch words? Can I translate the English words, and would the spell still be the same spell?
Oh, yes, of course. Absolutely. Oh, I'm so glad I wrote this book. I really am, because
me too.
It's very simple, and it's very, right? I mean, you've seen it. It's very accessible and straightforward. And in fact, it has spells from Old England, from Devon, has a wonderful healing spell, an abundance spell for apple trees. And it has an old Italian spell, and it has the old Italian dialect. And then it has the English. You should do your spells in the language that is your native tongue. If you're comfortable doing it. I mean, I love Italian, and I have a big community in Italy, and I butcher the language, but I love, attempting it. And I do not worry about making a mistake, because I know, what it is that I intend to say. And you have to feel joyful, and you have to feel free. Oh, look at the light. Isn't that wonderful?
No, it's been magical this whole time. It's such a shame people can't see it, but look at that. Wow.
Casting spells.
Literally, that's amazing. I feel like I want to take a video of that. I might have to share that. It's recording, so we've got it.
Good. I want that too. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, wow.
Just the abundance.
Yeah, that is
We started
amazing.
with
Wow.
phosphorus. You did this. You invoked this.
We did. We did.
And Hecate's here. Oh, look at that.
That is
So,
magical.
yes, well, magic is real. I mean, this is the
Yeah.
thing. The more you do it, the more you
Mm.
see it. Although that does.
And we kind of have to trust it as well. I'm seeing like for me, people who I used to be homeopath, and for me, people would come to me and be like, well, homeopathy doesn't work. And it's like, because you're not actually invoking it and like consciously and intentionally working with it. So there's that level of trust as well, I think, that we have to bring in.
Yes. And I, I mean, you're a wise woman, Nicole. You are a wise woman. And I'm glad you brought that up because we have the witch wound, the trauma, right, has taught us not to trust ourselves, has certainly taught us not to trust the natural world, and not to trust that spirit will be present for us when we need it. And we live in a harsh, difficult world. And so, yeah, those things can be difficult, to have trust, to have faith. But one of the wonderful things about doing this work is that it works. If you work it, it will work. And one of the things that I loved about witchcraft from the beginning was that I wasn't asked to believe or have faith, right? I was given practices, and I quickly expanded what those practices were because I included core shamanic techniques. And the practices work if you work them, and spells are spiritual practices. And so my trust in spirit, my trust in nature, although there are pandemics and there's snakes and ticks and, right? It's not Disney. Okay. But my essential trust has been borne out. And so I have faith. I have trust. It's through the practices. It's through the cultivation of this relationship, through casting spells, through having rituals, through standing, beneath the moon and moon bathing, that, I have come to have faith in myself. I have come to have faith in creation. I have come to have faith in spirit because they're present, because I've experienced that as present, as true, as real. I cast a spell. I ask for a sign. The sign comes, the spell manifests. You begin to have confidence in your capacity to make magic because you are magic. I mean, ultimately, that's where it's taking us, to a place of self-awareness where we understand that we are magical beings interwoven into a magical world, a deeply sacred world that loves us, that's organized to help us be healthy and happy. And all that it asks from us is that we give back in kind, that we contribute to the well-being of creation, to the magic of creation. And spells do that. They make our lives better. And, as you become more confident, as you develop more faith in yourself, as you develop more faith in magic, in the magic of creation, you're more able to contribute to the well-being, to the healing of the world. There's a reason that people are listening to you. There are reasons that your listeners are drawn to these practices, to the word witch, whatever the fears or concerns are. What is calling them is greater than fear.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That actually brings us nicely into the next question, if you've got time for these.
Yeah,
There's just
yeah.
a couple more. The next question. So I would love to ask Phyllis if she feels the words she uses in her spells come from her mind, her body, or maybe she feels they're from somewhere else. How do you feel when you write your spells? Do you channel them?
Yes and yes. Some of them are, when I writing for me is spellcasting. The book itself it's full of spells, but the book itself is a spell.
I love
to
that.
change and heal and bring well-being and a sense of wonder to the world, right? And so when I write, there's this, like when casting a spell, because writing for me is magical, some of it's me and some of it's more than me. And some of it is coming from me and some of it is coming from something far wiser, and more, far more powerful, but far more hopeful, I think, than I myself am. If you asked me, what does the future hold? I would say I'm worried. But if I ask creation says, you people need to get your act together. Because, Mother Earth has the magic of rebirth and regeneration, and she will, if we will just leave her alone and stop abusing her, she will heal. But the consequences of our failing to engage in this sacred relationship in the right way, of continuing to abuse and exploit, is that things are dying, that we're responsible. We are the agents of the death of species and the suffering that they're experiencing, and that has to end. So one of the things, when I write, I am writing from what I know, from my intellect, my learning, my skills, my training, my spells that, over more than 40 years. But as I work, like in casting a spell, right? And I say, leave space for something more than yourself, your own intention, your own limited ideas. I'm always leaving that open space to be filled by something greater than myself. And sometimes it's there, and sometimes it's, having cocktails at the plaza and, is having a fitting with Alexander McQueen, shows up the next day.
I love that as well. Yeah. And the other question was, does she have a special ritual for writing her spells?
No. No. Some of them are from old grimoires. Some of them are from the old books that I have. I wanted to sprinkle in some old magic,
Love
some
that.
folk magic.
Would you recommend that people keep grimoires and kind of journals of the spells that they use?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And a lot of the spells call for journaling, for writing. What did you experience? What happened? What did you see? What did you discover? The spells are very interactive. They're very focused upon, your experiences and learning from them and asking certain questions and then finding the answers. Absolutely keep. I wish I'd kept more, than I did.
Yeah.
But I've got yes, and some spells can take a lifetime to manifest. So, and you may even forget that.
Or the next lifetime. Who knows?
A very appropriate thing to say at Samhain.
Yeah. And then the last question was, can we use spells for emotional as well as physical healing? I'm assuming yes, as they're both the same thing, really.
Oh, yes. There's a whole section of, in it, like I said, in addition to the usual suspects of love. I mean, the love spell section begins with a spell for self-love, with the writing of a love letter. I mean, there's candle and a few other things, but the magic, the potent magic, is in the writing of a love letter to yourself. There's a tremendous amount of healing and self-care. There's a whole section on self-care, of how you take care of yourself, finding the things that nourish your soul, that take care of your body, baths and teas and grounding in nature and spending time in the natural world, and baths and things of that sort. And there's a whole section that I just felt was essential, that I took very seriously. And that is a weaving together of my work as a spiritual counselor for so many years, my appreciation for therapists, and my friendships with some wonderful women who are therapists, my valuing of it from personal experience from years ago when I went through therapy, my experience of depression, which I went through at the end of that marriage that I told you about, and the depth of the heartbreak that I experienced then. And I did a section in which I got the assistance of my friends who are therapists. I wrote the spells, and then I asked, is this good, is this good work in the context of a therapeutic model? And got their input, which was so helpful. So there are spells for depression, for isolation, for inertia, which often accompanies depression, for social anxiety, for self-doubt, and I think they're therapeutically sound, they're magically effective. I've used them, variations of them in the past, and went back and said, now let's really, bear down on this and get the therapeutic input and, refine them so that they're really effective if you put them out into the world. And they're really potent, they're really powerful. I did an interview with our release party with Pam Grossman was my host to ask the questions, and she's just marvelous with the Witch Wave podcast. She's just fab. And we were talking about this section, and all of a sudden she said, oh, I suffer from social anxiety. I have to call her back and really say, I heard you. And we had the conversation continued, but people that you would least likely think suffer from social anxiety do. And fear, I have quite a number of spells that deal with fear and how to marshal your courage. With self-doubt, I have some wonderful rituals that I've done for myself, because I tend to be like, next, next, on to the next task. What's my next responsibility? I rarely stop and revel in what I've accomplished. Because I
think that's a witchy thing.
So you will love that ritual.
Yeah, I will.
Create the altar.
What page is it? I'm gonna look it up right after this.
And celebrate yourself. That's what it's called. Celebrate yourself. We have such power. We just need to trust ourselves and trust spirit and trust creation. And the spells, when they're approached, not as these sort of silly, superstitious, mechanistic things, which is what culture limits them as, but rather as these really transformative, empowering spiritual practices, this art form that draws forth our own grace. They may not change things on the outside. Sometimes they will. Very often they do. But they will always, 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 always change and empower you on the inside. That's what good spiritual practices do. Don't be afraid. Have fun. Have fun.
Yeah. Joy, the fiery joy. Yes, we're back full circle now. Yeah, amazing. And I love what you said there around, it feels to me that often some of the kind of more mainstream aspects, or I can't remember how you describe them, but like the kind of typical manifestation laws, if you like, they're almost trying to fit magic into like a mundane box that kind of packages it so that people can easily get it. But there is a kind of nuance that I feel your work really kind of has that deep level of truth to. So I just wanted to witness that, because that feels really powerful.
Thank you. I mean, everybody, listen, we've been casting spells since we were kids, right? Did they intend to teach us how to cast spells? But they did, blow out your birthday candle and make a wish. wish upon a star. From the very beginning, we were taught how to open our hearts to the world and have faith that what we wished for could come true. We weren't, especially as women, we weren't really given the rest of what we needed, right, to fully manifest. But we have the power to do that now. And we have the magic to do that now. We have a tendency to think mechanistically because that's the world that we live in. We live in a culture that sees the universe as a machine and sees the planet as nothing but, inert resources, and sees us as, the apex predator, that everything exists for us. It's very infantile. But this is the moment. There's something greater than ourselves that's calling to us. Right? Magic is always about relationship to ourselves, to the sacred in ourselves, to the magic in ourselves, to the magic of creation, to the magic of spirit, how we approach that relationship. But there's something, I will tell you, especially for those who are in fear, there's something greater than yourself calling you to come into this magical divine relationship, to find your purpose. And part of your purpose is the self-healing, but the healing of the wounds that we've inflicted on the planet. And when you find your purpose, and when you serve something greater than yourself, it makes you greater than you are, which is why the book takes people from this sort of simple thing, but to this sense of wonder, where you are and why you're here. That purpose is why I was willing to be public 40 years ago when I should have been scared to death. And the sense of wonder and the sense of injustice, right? And the sense of the world needs her witches. The world needs witches' wisdom, these ancient ways, which turned out to be the ways of nature's magic. The world needs this. As you begin to cast your spells and as you begin to experience your magic, that you are magic, that you're a spell, a love spell, really, you're going to find your purpose. And when you find your purpose, you're going to find your strength, and you're not going to be afraid. And it will be about more than you. It will be about being a healer. And the world needs our witches now. So don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of.
That's so gorgeous. That's just what our listeners needed to hear. So thank you, and thank you for your courage along your whole journey to have brought you to where you are now. It's so inspiring for so many of our women as well. So deep appreciation for you.
I have to tell you before we go, I have a little tiny gift for them. It's a little excerpt from Spells for Living Well. So if you go to my website, and I guess it's spellcasting, one word. There's a beautiful little sort of little teeny tiny mini book called Step by Step. It's a step-by-step guide to casting spells. And it distills this little section of the book to show you what spells really are as spiritual practices, and how simple it can be to cast them, and what the essential elements are, and to give you guidance if you're already doing it, to sort of enrich it with the full depth and measure and magic and potential of what you could do. I mean, spells have always been used for practical purposes. They're manifesting on steroids because they go from just intention to full-on energy and emotion and action and engagement and relationship with all this other magic. And they're easy to do.
Yeah, full-on embodiment.
Full-on embodiment.
Full-on embodiment. That's gorgeous. Yeah, and your book is out now as well. So I highly recommend it. I have a copy right in front of me. So,
do you not love the fox?
I
Right?
know, yeah.
I was so thrilled. Yeah, Danielle Barlow, who I worked with on the tarot deck,
So gorgeous.
I asked her to do the cover and as a spell, and she did a brilliant job. And then I asked her for Fox, who was the guy
Oh,
of the deck, and he's all he, she, they, it is everywhere in the book. So,
I love
uh,
it. Yeah,
oh,
gorgeous.
lovely,
Thank you.
a joy, always a joy to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Phyllis. Oh, what an episode. Here are my takeaways. Spells are a spiritual practice. They are a way of working with the spirits of the elements and nature, which is very different to your average use of a spell. But each of the elements are their own independent, natural, organic forces with a spiritual wisdom. That's what we're working with to create magic, and it really deeply resonates with our remedies of the wild in this path. And you can have conversations with them. Fire is an agency of change, and it can destroy if you don't have the right reverence and relationship with it. Use it well, and you'll create magic that changes the world. Use it with a negative intention, and it will be destructive. This is the gift for our phosphoric women when they harness their fire from love. They create magic. Witches are healers, and in order to heal, we must be wounded. There's a deep gold to be found in these wounds, and by working with spellcasting, we learn to heal ourselves with alchemy. It's not so much about the words we use in spells as much as the deeper energetic place they come from and the emotion that charges them. You are the creator of the spell, but you are also the spell itself. And when you wake up to that, that's the empowerment. Spells are also a way of embodying your intention rather than just a way to set intentions. In casting a spell, you are opening yourself up to the divine, to spirit, but you also have to take action on the spell, otherwise, nothing will manifest.
If you'd like to get the show notes and links for everything we've chatted about in this episode, head to www.secretwitch.co.uk. If you know a secret witch who would love this episode, please share with them to help them liberate themselves. And so you don't miss out on next week's episode, head to your podcast app of choice and hit subscribe. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.